The great Scottish philosopher David Hume wrote the Dialogues Concerning Natural Religion, which he had published by his friend Adam Smith after his death in 1779. Hume would not let the dialogues be published before his death because of the detrimental impact he thought it would have on his career. Hume had already not been offered a position as a professor because of his skepticism, and many people perceived him to be an atheist as well. Hume knew his dialogues would be considered hostile to religion and did not want to further harm his chances at a professorship or further scar his reputation. Hume developed the dialogues as a conversation between three fictional philosophical theologians, Philo, Demea, and Cleanthes, over the nature and knowability of God. Pamphilus, a student of Cleanthes, transcribes this fictional philosophical debate. The debate between Philo, Demea, and Cleanthes is over the nature of the divine and the ability to know the divine through natural reason and experience. All three characters take different positions on the method by which a divine being should be discovered, and therefore each man has a different conclusion on the divine's nature and character. Hume created Demea to represent a radically orthodox, possibly misguided thinker, engaging in philosophical debate while trying to defend a classical theistic doctrine. Demea thinks that the only way to properly go about knowing the divine by nature is to use a priori reason, that is, reason without appealing to experience or the observable processes of nature. Only this process of using pure reason apart from experience, will lead to conclusions consistent with those of the greatest of theologians, and preserves personal piety and orthodox conceptions of God and religion. Hume has Cleanthes represent a natural theologian, or someone who thinks that knowledge of God can be attained by rational reflection and observation of the natural order. Cleanthes desires to uphold the rational validity of theistic proofs, especially those that are inductive, that is, proofs of God that rely on experience and are not absolute, but probably true and rationally justified. For example, earlier in the dialogues, Cleanthes presents a teleological argument for God for Demea and Philo. A teleological argument, in general, takes the world as a whole, or aspects of nature that seemed to be designed, and argues that a designer must have created the world, and therefore God must be that designer. Cleanthes presents his argument as follows. Look round the world, contemplate the whole and every part of it. You will find it to be nothing but one great machine, subdivided into an infinite number of lesser machines, which again admit of subdivisions, to a degree beyond what human senses and faculties can trace and explain. All these various machines, and even their most minute parts, can be adjusted to each other with an accuracy which ravishes into admiration all men who have ever contemplated them. The curious adapting of means to ends through all nature resembles exactly, though it much exceeds, the productions of human contrivance, of human design, thought, wisdom, and intelligence. Since, therefore, the effects resemble, and that of the author of nature is somewhat similar to the mind of man, though possessed of much larger faculties, proportioned to the grandeur of the work which he has executed. By this argument a posteriori, and by this argument alone, we do prove at once the existence of a deity and his similarity to human mind and intelligence. Cleanthes thinks we should make arguments a posteriori, or from the realities of our experience, not a priori like Demea, by relying on reason alone. And according to Cleanthes, a good a posteriori theistic argument will be teleological, and point out that the design in the world logically requires the existence of a designer that is outside of the world in order to explain its design. Philo is thought by many to be Hume's representation of himself. While this may not be necessarily true, it is definitely true that Philo is, to a large extent, Hume's mouthpiece for the majority of his own ideas. This means that Philo, in his arguments against both Cleanthes and Demea's theistic arguments, is trying to incorporate a skeptical understanding of knowledge and rationality. He often critiques his fellow thinkers for appealing to piety and ignoring the actual nature and conclusions of their own arguments. Early in the dialogues, Cleanthes replies to Philo, "You propose, then, Philo, to erect religious faith on philosophical skepticism." Cleanthes is being kind of nasty, but he's pretty much right. If Philo does end up believing that someone can know the divine by natural means, this knowledge is erected on the foundation of Philo's philosophical skepticism.